Hey guys, it's Trail over at GOHUNT, and I wanted to do a quick video on how to guarantee yourself an elk tag in 2023. Despite popular demand, there are still a lot of opportunities to put yourself in the field to hunt elk this coming fall. And I wanted to run through the various states and the various options to get yourself a permit to make sure that you get a chance to go hunt elk in 2023. So with that, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to cover state by state and really kind of outline the best options for you to make sure that you get a chance to go hunting. So with that, I did want to touch on a couple of states where their deadlines have already passed. So Arizona, their deadline was February 14th, which just barely passed. That's the deadline for antelope and elk. So if you didn't hit that deadline in Arizona, unfortunately that has passed. Another date that has passed will be Wyoming elk. So that deadline for non-residents was January 31st. So those are two states that at this point are beyond the window for you to actually apply. I would encourage you in both of those states, especially Wyoming, where you have a point-only purchase time frame from July 1st through October. You can actually log on to their Game and Fish website, buy a preference point. I would highly encourage you to do so. Same with Arizona. Arizona is a great elk state. You do have to buy an elk license in order to apply. But I would highly encourage you next year, get your application in, make sure that you're at least applying for elk in Arizona because it is a phenomenal elk state. So with that, we're going to move into the options that are available to you still upcoming this spring. First, I want to cover the states that are primarily draw elk states. So those are states where your opportunity to get a permit are primarily through the draw. So with that, I'm going to cover those. The first I want to touch on is New Mexico. So New Mexico is a great elk state. All the elk permits are allocated in New Mexico through a draw. It's a totally random draw, no bonus point system, no preference point system. So everybody is on equal playing field, and I would highly encourage you to apply. You do have to buy a hunting license, and you do have to front the cost of the elk permit that you apply for. But beyond that, you will be refunded for the elk permit if you're unsuccessful in the draw. New Mexico is one of my very favorite elk states. I would highly recommend, dive in, do the research. You get 3 choices when you apply. They are going to consider all 3 of your choices before they move to the next applicant. So it does allow you to kind of stagger your choices, maybe take a swing for the fences approach with your first choice towards a hunt, it's your third choice that has slightly better odds, but still a good hunt. And I would highly suggest you look at New Mexico. It's actually one of the more economical states to apply in. And once again, completely random draw odds, no point system, so you're not behind the curve if you didn't start building points a number of years ago. The deadline for New Mexico is going to be March 22nd, so plan on applying in New Mexico for elk. I always throw in my application for elk in New Mexico because, like I said, if you draw that permit, you're in for a really good hunt. Next state I would touch on would be Utah. So Utah is also an awesome elk state. A lot of their permits are allocated through the state draw, and you do have to apply to be considered for those limited entry permits. The odds of drawing a limited entry permit in Utah are very long. They're tough. The odds aren't good, and I wouldn't sugarcoat that and give you any kind of false hope. If you look at the draws within your insider research account, you will see that they're pretty tough, but I still think Utah is worth applying. Half of the permits in Utah for each limited entry hunt are going to be allocated to the people with the most points, but half of those permits are randomly allocated with bonus points giving you additional chances in the draw, essentially. But even if you're applying for the first year, you do have a chance to draw those limited entry permits in Utah. My wife drew a permit with no points on her very first year of applying. I do think it's worth applying in Utah for elk. At a minimum, build some points and increase your chances of drawing a permit in the future. Again, Utah is a phenomenal elk state, one of the best trophy states for elk in the West. Above and beyond that, a lot of people don't know, but Utah actually has available to you over-the-counter permits. And those are typically going to go on sale in mid-July. And there's essentially 2 different types of over-the-counter elk licenses in Utah. One being over-the-counter spike elk permits. And what that allows you to do is to hunt spike elk on limited entry units. You get a chance to look at some of the biggest bulls in the West, but you're out hunting spike elk only on those limited entry hunts. The archery permits for those hunts are unlimited. You can absolutely, buy those. Those are guaranteed to you over the counter, and there's no limit on those whatsoever. There's also opportunities for over-the-counter spike rifle and muzzleloader. And there's going to be about 15,000 any weapon permits available for the early any weapon season for spikes. If you plan on hunting Utah for spike elk, you want to make sure that you jump on that and you buy your permit as soon as those go on sale in July. Those sell out relatively quick, and they've been selling out even quicker, so be aware of that. The other type of over-the-counter hunts that are available to you in Utah are on the any bull units. So Utah has these any bull units where you can shoot any bull that you find you encounter on the field. Those units, they don't manage them for particularly high harvest success or even relatively good hunts, if I'm honest. They did increase the number of any bull units this year. They actually added 5 additional units that had previously been limited entry units that are now available to you within that any bull unit hunt. Those units might be pretty good this year. My gut says that within the next coming 2 to 3, 4 years, a lot of the elk are going to be shot out of those units. So this year might be a good year if you're interested in buying an any bull permit in Utah and going on a hunt. Once again, the archery tag in Utah, that's available to you over the counter. It's unlimited. You can hunt the any bull or the spike elk units. There is also going to be 15,000 total any weapon permits for the early any bull hunt. Those are going to sell out. Like I said, if you plan on hunting those any bull units or the spike units, you want to make sure that you're aware of the date that those go on sale in Utah and you buy your permit as soon as possible because they will sell out. All right, the next state I wanted to touch on is Nevada. So Nevada has extremely long odds to draw an elk tag, but it is a great elk state should you draw that permit. If you decide to apply in Nevada, what it essentially becomes is a cost-benefit analysis. You may apply for decades and never draw a permit in Nevada. So you really have to look and see if it's worth that license that you have to purchase to then apply to essentially apply in Nevada and build points to draw a permit. Nevada's draw system is random, so it's a weighted bonus point random system. So even if you apply for the first year, you still have a chance, but your chances are going to get better the longer you apply and the more points you build. Nevada may not be a state that makes your list. It just is really a cost-benefit analysis. You'll want to use your insider research account and really look at the draw odds, look at the cost of applying over many years potentially to draw a permit and decide if it's worth it to you. One thing that I would note in Nevada is a relatively new system that they started a couple years ago for turnback tags. So in Nevada, people that have drawn a permit and decide that they want to turn their tag back in to retain their points can do so, and any permit that's returned up to 14 days prior to that hunt starting is going to be reallocated through a first come, first served list via their state website. And to be available for that, essentially all you have to do is watch the Nevada Game and Fish website. You have to check the little first come, first serve tag list. And those are randomly going to be uploaded on their website. And if you're the first person that adds that to your cart and is able to check out and pay for it, you can actually acquire some pretty phenomenal tags in Nevada. The key to that is just being on their site constantly during that time frame prior to hunt starting. You really want to have the website up, have multiple windows open, just keep kind of checking it out of the side of your eye. If you have the ability to work from an office, that's a great option, and potentially, like I said, you could pick up the tag of a lifetime off that first come, first served list. So be aware of that in Nevada. All right, the next state I'm going to talk about is Colorado, and Colorado really is your bread and butter to make sure that you have an elk tag for the fall of 2023. Colorado has a drawing to allocate a lot of their permits. The deadline for that is typically about April 4th. You do have to apply in that draw to secure those permits. A lot of people think because Colorado is a preference point state that you have to have been applying and building points to secure permit in Colorado. The great thing about Colorado is that they have so many hunt options. They've got archery, they've got rifle seasons, they have muzzleloader seasons. I took a quick look within my insider research account within the filtering portion, and I actually just saw there's 114 hunts that were available last year in the 2022 draw with no points. So that's somebody that's applying for the very first time. They had 100% odds to draw a permit and go hunting. So you want to be aware of that. You don't necessarily have to rely on the over-the-counter permits, which I'll touch on here in a sec. There are a ton of draw permits in Colorado that you can draw with no points. If you've got a few points, maybe 2, 3, 5, 8, there are still a bunch of hunts that are available to you that allow you to get out and go hunting in a unit that potentially has a little less pressure than you might see in the over-the-counter units in Colorado. So I keep touching on over-the-counter in Colorado. So Colorado still has phenomenal hunting, archery, and second and third rifle seasons in a lot of the units in the state. If you use your filtering 2.0, you can actually very quickly and easily scroll down to the select season. You can find the seasons that you're most interested in. It will indicate whether those are available to you over the counter. You can click on those and it's actually going to populate the map and show you just the units where those over-the-counter hunts are available to you. You can actually purchase those in person from any game and fish office or any sporting goods store. You can also buy them online, which I would suggest if you know you're going to go out and hunt, you can buy those online. But like I said, you can also purchase them right before you hunt at any sporting goods store or game and fish office in Colorado. Colorado, like I said, it still is your best opportunity at this point to guarantee yourself an elk license. You can do that either through the draw, depending on how many points you have, or you can buy that permit over the counter. You can go hunting. Colorado still has the largest elk herd in the world. It might get a little bit crowded on some of those over the counter or easy to draw options, but like I said, that is your best option right now, currently, to guarantee yourself a permit for 2023. So the next state I wanted to talk about was Montana. And Montana is an excellent elk state. They have really good populations. They have pretty good trophy potential, even across their general season elk opportunities. People get really confused about Montana and their draw system. I'm going to do my very best to explain to you how the draw system, how the tags are allocated in Montana and help you understand. You essentially have to think about Montana as two different pools of permits. You have the general elk combo and the big game combo, and then you have special limited quota elk licenses. The special limited quota elk licenses are licenses that are allocated through a separate draw. Those are managed for a somewhat better hunt, less hunting pressure, better trophy potential. Then you have the general season combo licenses. So you have the elk combo, which is an elk license and a small game and a fishing license. You have the big game combo, which is an elk, a deer, a small game, and a fishing license. So the way it works in Montana is you actually have to apply for a general combo license. And if you're successful in that draw, your application, should you choose to put one in for the special limited quota hunts, will be considered. If you do not draw the general combo license, your application for the special limited quota license won't even be considered. So that's something you want to think about. There are actually two different point systems for the two different pools of permits. 75% of the general combo licenses are going to be allocated to the people that apply with the most preference points. 25% of those general combo licenses are going to be randomly allocated among the people that apply with no points at all. The special limited quota permits are actually allocated through a bonus point system. So it's a weighted system. It's a random draw. The more bonus points you have, essentially the better chances you have of drawing a permit in that special limited quota draw. So that's kind of how Montana works, and it gets a little bit confusing. Managing preference points in Montana can be a little bit hard to understand. When you apply, if you've never applied for a general combo license, you can choose to purchase a preference point, and you'll actually go into the draw with one preference point. That may not guarantee you a permit. In reality is, and we saw this last year, is that actually applicants with 0 points that apply had better odds because they were considered in that 25% random pool for those permits. So there does take some consideration when you're applying for your general season permits in Montana. It's a great state, but you definitely want to jump into that application strategy article for Montana and become very familiar with their draw system and how their points work, and then plan out your strategy to draw a permit, whether that's potentially this year, or maybe you pick up a point, you pick up a following point the next year and you actually try to draw a permit on that second or third year. There is some strategy in Montana, but like I said, it is a phenomenal elk state. You definitely want to put it in your repertoire of applying for elk tags in the West every single year. You want to figure that out. Like I said, the best helps to you are going to be that application strategy article. It's also going to be things like draw odds, standalone draw odds. And then should you draw a permit, Filtering 2.0 and those general season units within Filtering 2.0 can be a very big help to you. All right, the last thing I will say about Montana in terms of picking up an elk permit is that if you do not draw a general season license, they do have the opportunity for people that have drawn licenses to return those permits, and they're going to reallocate those on a waiting list. So you can actually get your name in, you register your email, your account, and they're going to go through the list of people randomly and try to reallocate permits to you. So if you don't draw a permit, get yourself on that waiting list, and you could potentially pick up a permit that's been turned back into the state of Montana. Another state we haven't talked about is Idaho. So Idaho has over-the-counter licenses, but unfortunately those went on sale for non-residents December 1st, and they sold out pretty quick this year. So if you're looking for a permit for 2024, you want to be aware that Idaho does have permits over-the-counter, and they go on sale December 1st, and that's how they've done that the last couple years. So be aware of that. Idaho does have permits that they allocate through a controlled hunt drawing. And that application time frame is typically about the first week in June. I think it was about June 5th last year. If you look within your Insider Basecamp, you'll actually have those dates published. So when that comes available to you, if you decide to apply in Idaho, you can do so very simply online. You can buy a hunting permit, which is $185 for a non-resident, and you can apply for a controlled hunt drawing. Idaho is a completely random state. There's no bonus points, no preference points, so there is no penalty if you've never applied in the state of Idaho. Idaho does have permits that they reallocate on a first-come, first-served basis every single year. And those permits come out of two pools. They are permits that are general over-the-counter licenses that people have bought and they decide to return those, or potentially there are controlled hunts that are drawn by people that decide not to purchase those. They're actually going to reallocate those on a first come, first served basis, and you can buy those online. And we're actually going to publish the dates within your Insider account as those become available. So you want to keep an eye on that, because that is another opportunity to pick up a permit that's been turned back in Idaho. So that's just one other avenue that you could potentially get a permit to go hunt elk in 2023. Couple other states I wanted to touch on. I'm just going to touch on these briefly because typically I do not advise people to apply in these states as non-residents. If you're a resident of either Oregon or Washington, it may make sense for you to apply for their permits. But typically, if you're not a resident of one of those states, I don't advise it because it's expensive, and I don't particularly think the value is there for the amount of money that you put into your application. I will say in both of those states, they do have over-the-counter or general season elk hunting opportunities. Primarily in Oregon, you're looking at the West Coast for Roosevelt elk. Washington also has some general season hunts. Again, it's a little bit expensive to apply and get those permits, but those are both available to you. And typically I would tell you, if you're from one of those states and it's your neighboring state, that may be an option for you to look at to make sure that you secure an elk permit. But in my opinion, there are better opportunities in a state like Colorado or potentially even Utah for the over-the-counter any bull or spike elk hunts. So I said a lot. I just want to recap for you, give you a 30,000-foot view, and really give you the best options that you can guarantee yourself an elk tag in 2023. The first one, Colorado. Colorado over-the-counter is definitely an opportunity that you should search out if you want to guarantee yourself an elk permit. The next state, Utah. Utah over-the-counter for any bull or spike elk units. Those do go on sale, like I said, in July. You want to watch those deadlines, and you do want to be first for those because they are going to sell out relatively quickly, but those are good opportunities. So I would say those are really your two best bets. Colorado, think about Utah as well. And then, like I said, backups, potentially you want to play that application game, whether it's in Montana, New Mexico, Colorado for their limited quota permits, maybe Idaho for a turnback tag, and potentially maybe even Oregon and Washington if you really have nothing else rolling. But like I said, everything that you would need to know to make sure that you guarantee yourself a permit for 2023 for elk is within this video, and even more so, it's within your insider research account. You definitely want to check the draw odds, you want to check filtering 2.0, and you really want to pay attention to those application strategy articles that come out for every state prior to their deadlines. That's really going to give you everything that you need to know to make sure you get a permit to go hunt elk in 2023.